Happy Monday, everyone. This is Martha with Nature Niche, and this week I want to share just the fabulous time that I had at the Aldo Leopold Festival this year in the Cheneaux Islands area of Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Um, this festival celebrates the historical tie to Aldo Leopold, a very famous naturalist and um, the father of conservation, and they have wonderful field tours, all sorts of excursions, and basically celebrate the natural ecosystems and their habitants along northern Lake Huron. So I wanted to share a dozen of the spring wildflowers that I was able to observe by participating in this festival. And I'm not going to say exactly where these things were found. Many of these are sensitive or even threatened and endangered species. So I will talk about their habitats, but not their exact location. If you want to see these species, I encourage you to go up to Michigan's Upper Peninsula and participate in a festival like the Aldo Leopold Festival, and just explore some of the wonderful public lands that have trail systems up there. You can see so many amazing things. Because this is available to public viewing, and there are people who unethically collect these species, I don't want to state their exact location. And I just want to reiterate, it's very important to leave these species in place in their native ecosystems. Often digging them up, you will be unsuccessful in your own gardens, and it is, besides being unethical, often illegal to do so. So I hope in sharing this footage, you get a sense of all of the wonderful spring wildflowers that you can see in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. First up is the magical little orchid, Calypso, also known as fairy slipper. Scientific name is Calypso bulbosa. And this species, the records in our lower peninsula are considered historical. Really, this species only occurs in the upper peninsula, most commonly in coniferous forests growing under the shade of balsam fir and northern white cedar, as well as spruces and hemlock. Sometimes it can be found with balsam fir and paper birch in mixed forests. And it's often found on old beach ridges near the shores of the Great Lakes, sometimes drier soils over limestone. But this species is state threatened, so it is legally protected. Has a coefficient of conservatism of 10, so the highest you can get. Definitely needs our protection. Next up is the Ramshead lady slipper, another lovely orchid. The Latin name is Cypripedium eritinum, and this species you'll find in low dunes. It likes partial shade of conifers, and you'll find it along the northern shores of lakes Michigan and Huron and on Lake Superior, sometimes occurring more inland under jack pine and oak, and also occurring in coniferous swamps growing with northern white cedar, tamarack, spruces, and fir. And this lovely species is special concern in the state, so it is being monitored for potential listing as threatened or endangered. This next lady slipper, yellow lady slipper, Cypripedium parviflorum, or I learned it as Cypripedium calceolus. This species is known throughout the state of Michigan. You'll find it in a bunch of different kinds of habitats except the really driest sites. It likes moist forests with coniferous, mixed, and deciduous species. You can find it in fens, meadows, the borders of forests and clearings, usually under northern white cedar and in clearly calcareous soils, so those very basic soils. Another, and probably one of our commonest lady slippers, pink lady slipper, Cypripedium acali. And this species I covered in detail in Mondays with Martha number 53, but it was worth showing here again, just with the lovely set of lady slippers I was able to see. This one grows in sandy dry forests under red pine and jack pine, mixed oak and pine forests, and aspens. It can do moist to wet ground, even hummocks and sphagnum bogs under cedar, tamarack, and spruce. But usually in more acidic soils, very uncommon in the limestone district of Michigan's Upper Peninsula. But we were able to see several lovely examples. This delicate little plant is Heartleaf Toy Blade, Neadia cordata. And this species is also a coefficient of conservatism of 10, so the highest you can get. And you'll find it in growing in sphagnum moss in coniferous swamps with cedar and tamarack, spruce, and firs. Less commonly, you might find it in hemlock groves and moist forests along Lake Superior. But it is a very delicate and inconspicuous little plant, but very fun flower structure. Also growing in the same habitat was false Mayflower, Myanthemum trifolium, another coefficient of conservatism of 10. And this little wildflower grows in bogs and coniferous swamps, especially along brooks and springs and other wetter microsites. And it looks very similar to the more common or well-known Canada Mayflower. Another little precious plant we saw was fringed polygala, polygala passaflora, also known as gay wings. And this has a coefficient of conservatism of 7. And you'll find it in all sorts of mixed and coniferous forests, except the very wettest or the very driest. It usually grows with firs, cedars, birches, aspens, hemlocks, and pines. And it really likes old shoreline ridges with calcareous substrate and sandy beach meadows, usually in shaded environments. And here's another diminutive little orchid species. This is Coral ariza trifida, early or northern coral root. And this little species you can find in coniferous and mixed forests and swamps, especially under northern white cedar, sometimes also in beech maple, aspen, and other forests, and less commonly in bogs and tamarack swamps, usually in pretty deep shade. This is another one that's very easy to overlook unless you are watching the forest floor closely. And this is the closely related striped coral root, Coral ariza striata. And this little bit larger species is also found in coniferous and mixed forests and swamps, again, especially in cedar thickets, especially associated with limestone bedrock, and you can also find it in beech maple forests. This is a very, I think, commonly known wildflower, Indian paintbrush. Castilegia coccinia is the species. It has a coefficient of conservatism of 8 and can be found along the calcareous, sandy, and gravelly shores, including interdunal flats and swales, as well as conifer thickets along river and stream banks and in swamps, especially cedar swamps, and occasionally in fens, marshy ground, meadows, and other springy and marly places. This is bird's eye primrose, Primula mystacinica, and the species is a coefficient of conservatism of 10. It's a very attractive species and is our only true native primrose. And this species you'll find near the shores of the Great Lakes. It's abundant in moist calcareous meadows and interdunal flats or swales. More inland, you might find it in fens, wet calcareous banks, and seepy sandstone and limestone cliffs, similar cool, moist microsites. It is a calciphile and does like that very basic pH. And last but certainly not least is dwarf lake iris, Iris lacustris. This is Michigan's state wildflower, and it is an endemic to the Great Lakes. And this species is both state and federally listed as threatened, and it occurs on moist sands and gravels, in limestone crevices, usually in slightly shaded areas along the edges of conifers like cedar and fir, along the northern shores of Lakes Michigan and Huron. I hope you've enjoyed this virtual tour of some of the lovely spring wildflowers you can see in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. I hope you get a chance to participate in the Aldo Leopold Festival in future years and see some of the great public lands we have in the Lake Cheneaux Islands area. Special thank you to the ecologists and botanists who led some of these excursions from the Little Traverse Conservancy. It really was a wonderful time. Take care. Have a good week.